folks, so I got the cam for the snowblower. It's not the same, it doesn't look the same, but hopefully I'm thinking it'll work. Maybe they have a cam for different models. So this cam here is plastic. Now mine doesn't have any gear on the end. Looks like a full gear. And of course mine is metal. It actually looks smaller than mine. So I'll be able to see. Sorry. Looks smaller than mine. It's plastic. Mine does also not have a gear on this end, but I'm hoping it'll work. But I guess we'll see. Now, I checked with the manufacturer. I checked with Jack Small Engine Parts. I checked with another online dealer, and even checked locally, and they all list this particular cam for my engine. Now, I even went back to the manufacturer Ariens and asked them if they gave me the wrong engine number for my snowblower. Now I gave them the model number and the serial number and asked them what engine I have, and they told me. I had them double check it when I saw this cam, and I knew it was the wrong part, or it didn't look the same. But we'll see if it works and keep washing. Okay folks, looks like the cam does fit. Sorry about that. So hopefully you can see this all brightened up, but there's a dot on the cam wheel, cam cog, and there's a dot on the crank for the engine. I'll line them up, and hopefully that's the right timing. Of course, when I put it back together, I will look at it and make sure the valves and exhaust open, or try to make sure they open at the right time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scrape this off with the razor blade and put a new gasket on there and put it back together. And I can tell you, I don't have a garage, so I'm out here in the shed. It's like 38 degrees out here. I want to fix this before it snows, or at least get it running enough to clear the driveway. I don't want, a bunch of parts. So maybe I can get it running and clear the snow, and at least I can put it out at the end, because I don't really want to buy a new engine for this, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time rebuilding this. So hopefully it works. Keep watching. Okay, let's see here. It's not perfect, but I am pretty cold. Should be enough to keep it sealed. Okay, there it is. Sorry, use my Dremel tool with the wire brush. Sure, it's not perfect. But guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to go wash it off in the sink and then dry it off to get the gasket mess out of there. Okay, I think I got all the water out. I used Q-tips and a paper towel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back together. And if it runs, and it should run, then I'm going to let it cook for about 15 minutes. I may take the dipstick out to let the water vapor get out, and then I'm going to change the oil anyway, which I was planning on doing. So let's put this back together. I like to test it off the machine, but I've got a nice holder on the machine, but I don't want to put it all back together if it doesn't run. Okay, so I've put the case back together, and to do that I put this on there, and I spin the crank and made sure the governor spun so that meant lined up with the cam. So I'm putting these bolts back in. So I'm not as hardy as I used to be. It's about 40 out there. It's been a little wet snow. I don't know if you can see it, but I got cold out there, and normally I wouldn't I got cold and I decided to come inside. So I didn't even get the engine running. Okay folks, hopefully you can hear me. It's another cold day, it's windy out here. So my valves, I need to adjust the valve clearance or valve lash is way off. So for one, I have no compression whatsoever. So you can see the intake valve opens, and then right after that the exhaust valve opens. And what they do is they obviously have the same cam in different ends, and they adjust it with the gap of the valve. So the way a 4-stroke is supposed to work is, let's see, so the intake valve is supposed to open as the piston is going down, and it draws in air and fuel, okay? And then there's supposed to be no valves open, and then the piston travels to the top, and that's the compression stroke. It takes all that fuel and air and it compresses it, and then the spark plug goes off, and you get a bang. So the piston travels down, and when it comes back up, the exhaust valve opens and it exits all that gas out of there. But what I have now is I have the intake opening, intake valve, and then almost right after that the exhaust valve. So I have no compression here whatsoever. See if we can get some. So you can spin it by hand, no problem. But get the spark plug in. So I really should have some compression. So I need to take these valves, take the head off, and take these valves out, which I didn't really want to do. And I need to grind this valve and see if I can lap that valve with a valve lapping compound and get it to seat better, because the gap here is supposed to be 0.004, and the gap here from what I saw is supposed to be 1/10 of an inch, and I checked 2 different motors. Okay, so I have the head off and I can see the valve, the intake valve is bent. So I'll try to show you this. Sorry. See if I can go down so you can see. Okay, so the intake valve over here is bent. It's bent because I struck it with the compression tester. It's just weird that it was busted in half. I assumed it was the exhaust valve that was touching its intake valve. So let me show you how this works. So let's see. So notice the piston up here is what's called top dead center. So it starts to travel down, and see the intake valve opens, and it goes all the way to the bottom. It sucks in gas and air, and then it comes up. No valves are supposed to be open now. Comes up to the top, and then the spark plug fires, and then right about, well, see, the valve timing's off, but what's supposed to happen is when the piston gets up to the top, the spark plug fires, it travels down all the way to the bottom on the compression stroke, and then coming back up, you see how this valve opens and exhausts, and then it pushes all the exhaust gas out. Now the timing's a little off because the gap is not off, but also there's this bent valve here that I'm going to have to take out. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I have the intake valve out of there. And look at the top here. I'll try to spin it here. See, it's definitely bent. And I can't bend that back because it's hardened steel. And the crank, or the case of the engine is aluminum. So there's just no way I have to get a new valve. Hi folks, well, it is cold out there, and I've noticed that when it is cold, my speech gets worse than it normally is, or it has been improving, but when it's cold it's a little worse, so you're gonna have to bear with me. So about 3 months ago I had brain surgery. I had 5 tumors removed, and then I did the compression check on the snow thrower like maybe a month after I got back or a couple weeks after I got back. So I didn't think I was that strong. I know I wasn't that strong. But anyway, I broke the snow thrower because I threaded the compression tester in there too far. And what I assumed happened was it struck the exhaust valve. Why did I assume that? Because the intake valve was still connected to the crank. The camshaft was busted in two, which meant the intake valve could still spin. And in fact, when I took it off, the intake valve was still operating. So I did two things. I busted the camshaft, so I ordered a new one of those. And actually the compression tester struck the intake valve. Hopefully you can see that it's bent. The top is bent pretty badly. So either the upholsterer has more torque than I thought it did, or I was stronger than I thought at the time, because it didn't feel hard to bust this crank or bust the cam, excuse me, and to bend this intake valve. So I'm going to order a new intake valve and I'll put it in there and gap it. Now, the exhaust valve is still too tight. I can still spin it by hand when it's closed, which means it's making contact and it's still too long. So I need to adjust the gap on the exhaust valve and get a new intake valve and adjust the gap on that. Now, I have no compressor because the intake valve was staying open. It was hanging open because it's bent, so the air was escaping out, and also because the exhaust valve is too tight. So I'm going to order a new valve, put it in there. I'm going to gap that. The gap on the intake valve is 0.004 tenths, which is pretty tight. The gap on the exhaust valve is a tenth, so it's 0.102 or 0.118 or something like that. But anyway, I'll gap it appropriately, but it's going to be a few days before I get the intake valve. So there's going to be a part 2 for this. That's what's wrong with my snow thrower, and it's my fault. You can see where the compression tester was threaded in there too far, and it struck the intake valve. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. There's going to be a part 2.